Hello, hello, hello. I'm Sable, the host of Full Out Healing, where I dive into my healing journey as a survivor and as so many things. And I'm so excited that you've joined me today. Believe it or not, this is episode number 8. And this is, I believe, day 11 of 100 Days of Truth. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Now, as I have with every episode, I'm going to talk about an idea or a concept related to to my healing journey and like some things that I've realized along the way. And I'm going to talk about how I related to it in the past versus how I relate to it now and what some of my hopes and desires for the future. Okay. So today, the topic for today's podcast is the martyr. Okay. Now, in the relationship I had with my abuser, they were the martyr in the relationship. Now, in the past, this is how I thought about this. My thoughts were, okay, so she had a traumatic childhood. Her mom was and continues to be cruel to her. Everyone abandoned her, including her ex, or her ex abandoned her just like everybody else. Not only that, she had some physical pain related to a trauma that and connected to doctors, and because of that, she can't go to any doctors for any help. Not only that, she had, and these are all of the thoughts I'm thinking that this is what was at the forefront of my mind in terms of trying to understand and make sense and possibly even justify what I was experiencing, right? Another thought that I had was like, well, she had bad depression and trauma. And not only does she have bad depression and trauma, some of that trauma comes from bad therapists. And so she can't go to any, or she can't stick with them because they all harm her. And it's a bad institution. This thought coexisted with the idea that I needed to stay in therapy because of how much I mess up things. And it also coexisted with the reality that she was fully a social worker who regularly advocated for therapy with her clients, her patients, or whatever, and sought to become one at one point herself. Okay, so this all coexisted in my mind at the same time, and I just kind of kept them as separate. After she assaulted me and pretty much after the time she almost killed me, one of the things that I asked for as a non-negotiable is I think you need some next level support because whatever you're doing isn't working. And another thing that I couldn't quite really maybe this sort of slips into the narrative part. Yeah, I'll get into that in a moment. But that was one of the things that I had asked for and needed in order for the relationship to continue. And part of what somehow and this is something I'll do another video about, but somewhere between when I asserted this is what I need to all of a sudden there's a new narrative and a new thought process in the relationship. I went from having that needed non-negotiable to eventually thinking, well, she can't get next level support because, this actually came from before. but there was sort of like a thought of like, well, she can't get next level support because she can't get or maintain a job if they ever found out that she needed any more extensive mental health services, right? That was something she told me in response to my request, and it kind of like shut down my request and my desire, and or like it was important to me, but it was very clear that it was kind of like, well, my desire is putting her well-being at risk. And so how can you be like a fucked up person that does that? You know? How I felt at the time was hopeless, utterly hopeless. I felt hopeless because, you know, I was trying to be compassionate and understanding that like, oh, she had all of these things going on, and oh, look at all of these things and isms in the world that make it hard to get support. But I also was like I felt constricted as well. I didn't know what to do. It seemed like what I wanted was not possible, and it made me feel hopeless at times. It also gave me like a great deal of despair about the future, which I just didn't know what the path, how it could be different. And I had this, you know, I think back to that time, and there were many boxes, many walls within me that separated all of these pieces of information, because at one point I couldn't, I had despair about the future and struggled to imagine what it could look like. And then but then sometimes I would like fantasize about a time when everything would be better, and I would look back at this is just the hard patch, a never-ending hard patch, but a hard patch nonetheless. You know, it was like somehow it all coexisted. At the time, the narrative that existed within the relationship around this idea, I want to be clear, it wasn't like we were explicitly like, well, you're a martyr, right? But the notion of it was there. Some narratives that existed to support that was, well, I'm unreasonable, me, Sable, I'm unreasonable and demanding for wanting these things, for wanting her to get help, to get support, to see a doctor, a therapist, to do anything, go on a Zen meditation trip, like heal yourself. The narrative was I was very unreasonable and demanding for wanting this. I also, when it came specifically to after that, the most extreme physical escalation of violence where she almost killed me, one of the things that I said that I wanted her to explore, to do like a batterer intervention program. And she said, well, I can't do those because of like, they're so heteronormative and they're mainstream, and there's not space for her in those programs as like a mass presenting Black queer woman. And that narrative shut it all the way down. Like I really wanted her to like do one of those programs to get help for that. Or to get help for that, right? To get help for being violent with me. And when she just mentioned the identity piece, I just remember feeling awful and shitty and being like, it was a total shutdown. I realized I can't ever bring this up again, because then I am, you know, saying I don't give a shit about her identity, you know? And so that was like the narrative, that like I want things that are harmful to her. This was a big one. Another narrative was that me wanting these things, and I forgot what particular, I'm sure I could pinpoint if I look back at like my journals or notes, but there was, after one incident, I was like, I talked about how frustrated I felt with the language we used to talk about things. Like, we would refer to these incidents as her blow-ups. That was particularly her language, right? And I talked about, like, I didn't like that language. I was like, you're doing, I don't remember exactly what I said, but it amounted to like violent things. Like, I just introduced the word violent, and that was it. It was, I think it was after a pretty bad incident, and I was like pretty, like, it, there were moments in that relationship where there were different extreme things that happened that really pushed me to the edge of being done. And I think, which is basically, you know, she was like testing my boundaries, testing my limits, and doing as much as she could, and sensing up on being the edge of it was like, oh, I need to pull back. And I think this was one of those times. But basically the narrative became that, and particularly after she almost killed me, that like I'm damaging her identity, and like my perception of her and the way I react to her is making her seem like a violent person, which is not who she is and is not damaging, or is very hurtful to her. And I, again, was like horrified, and I'm realizing all of these things, all of these implications of like harm doing on my part totally, swiftly, and effectively shut me down. Like, or it swiftly and effectively like cut out like any space I felt like I had to like demand something, assert something, express a feeling. If it came down to something I'm saying or doing is making her feel a certain way, or that I'm being harmful, it just, that was one device that was very effective in honestly making it easy for me to, well, like, one, for her to discount what I needed, and two, making it easy for me to like abandon what I needed yet again, you know? And oh my gosh, this is why okay, you'll probably feel a way about this, but I have to talk about it. So, particularly around the identity piece, when I was like, I need you to do like batterer intervention program. I need you to do all these other things. One of the things that she said, and this is a part of the narrative that kind of supported like self-silencing, and also like her total dismissal of like what I was expressing that I needed to feel safe, was she stated that that because I'm femme and pretty, I have femme and pretty privileges, and that means that I have access to resources that she didn't, which is why it's unreasonable for me to basically have any of these like requests or demands of hers, because my requests and demands, they're grounded in like the delusion of my privilege. And that's fucked up. That's abuse of power. That's all the isms. That's, you know, being a Karen on Front Street in your relationship. And that horrified me. And I say that it's so wild to talk about it now, because now I'm like, what the that makes no sense. But back then, it was a very powerful device. I felt so deeply insecure about my right to sort of like exist. I really internalized this idea of like being a burden. And so it really made, and not only did I have those ideas, like she stoked them and like manipulated them to get what she wanted from me, right? And so it really, now it sounds wild, but that's because I have a fundamentally different relationship with myself. Back then, that was like, I felt like a shit human. I felt like a shit human, and all I wanted to do was prove that I was a better person. That's how powerful that was. As a result of all these things at the time, I believed that there were no resources out there to help her. Not one. And for a time, I thought that I had to be the one to find the right one. And not that I had to be the one to find the right one, I just knew she wasn't gonna look for it. So I was like, the only way my life is gonna change is if I find the right resource for her and she's able to use it and she can get better, and then our lives can be good. I also believed at the time that I would be the one to help her heal. And this is part of that work. And this is part of what it looks like, being that one person that helps someone heal. And I also believed at the time, well, damn, because think about all that identity stuff. I believed this is the pain of the intersections of all of these isms, living in America, living in this world filled with racism and capitalism and all of these other things. I thought this is just the manifestation of all these isms, and therefore it's like not fair to judge her because no one asked to inherit these things. I know she didn't, I didn't. And so how I thought it would just be fucked up of me to hold her account to something that was basically a fault of the system. I didn't say those words, I didn't think it in a sentence, but I held that belief. And now I look back and I'm like, wow, that was like a genuine manipulation of my radical, beautiful beliefs about the world. But it was really just twisted and turned on its head. Now today, if you couldn't tell, my thoughts are eye roll. Like when I think about this whole Martyr shit, it's like the eye roll comes from the depths of my soul. Not just my soul, not just my eyes eye roll, but my soul eye rolls. That is like my genuine thought. I also look back and think about it and I'm just like, damn, oh my God, those are so many excuses. So many fucking excuses, like list after list after list. And I also think, wow, this is all conveniently impossible. Like what a perfectly constructed little scenario where literally everything that's true about the world is perfectly arranged to totally release you of any personal accountability for how you treat people, for how you treat me. And another thing I think about is like, well, damn, I'm human. I have pain. I have trauma too. I had trauma from my own childhood and lived experiences walking into the relationship. I look back and think, damn, why was your trauma like bigger or more important than mine? Why does your trauma allow you to be this way? And which, of course, that's not what allowed her to be this way. But I'm saying that to say, like, I recognize the different standards when I look back at all of the thoughts, beliefs, narratives, and feelings I used to have about this, I can see now they're just different. There were a different set of rules for us within the context of the relationship. I also think, I also think she was responsible for herself despite a lack of resources. And she chose not to be and found ways not to be by manipulating and projecting things onto me. How I feel about it now, I feel very clear. And that also makes me feel so grateful, because I used to feel so confused. Like, being in an abusive relationship is very confusing and very foggy. And I feel so fucking clear, and I feel so grateful for that clarity. It makes me feel free because I have no doubt. I don't have any questions about any of these things. Like, I'm just grateful to feel clear. I'm also honestly in awe and astounded by how legitimately unfucking just this shit was. Like, what? This is so unjust. If I heard if a friend told me this, I'd be filled with absolute and complete rage. And I'd have to remind myself to get into my seat, into my body, and think about, okay, what does this person need from me now? And that also makes me a little bit sad, because I think about, wow, why couldn't I do that for myself at the time? But then I also forgive myself and have compassion for myself, because I can recognize, I'm doing it for myself now. And I'm able to forgive myself because I can recognize the reasons and the things behind why I wasn't able to before. Like, I don't hold myself, I don't judge myself for things I didn't know how to do. That's unloving and unkind, and I don't do that to myself anymore. The narratives that I hold and carry now is that, she was responsible for the pain she carried and the impact it had on her life. And we all are responsible for the pain we carry and the impact we have in our lives. Like, it doesn't mean you're the cause of it, but you're responsible. I know that I'm responsible for the pain I carry and the impact it has on my life. It doesn't mean I caused it. It doesn't mean I deserved it. It means that I am the one who has that power and control over my own life, which means I now have that understanding of her. And I understand that because I have that understanding, that's why I'm able to see all of the projections and evasion of accountability, right? Because I didn't have that understanding before. That, no, I'm not responsible for your pain. And you have some good luck trying to convince me of that shit, because that's a never again type situation. I also understand that my action, my reaction, and my perception of her choices did not create a violent identity for her. Her violent choices, and I never even called her a bad person. I had internalized so much blame, that I wasn't even slinging language at her. There was none of that energy from it. I was afraid of her, and you bet your ass I tried to hide that fear because I was afraid of her knowing I was afraid. But I just recognized me existing as I am did not create her violent identity. If anything, if she holds a violent identity, it's her violent choices that fucking created that shit, not me. And I understand that now. Not only that, it's like her pattern of violence, which was selective, behind closed doors, and exclusively, and made this decision to exclusively enact it towards me. That is what makes her violent. Not my perception, not my reactions, not none of that shit. But it's like her choices and her pattern of choice. I also understand now that the expectation to find and use resources that the expectation I had for her to find and use resources that work for her is not unreasonable. That is the work of being human and being a human responsible for themselves on this earth. We're all searching for something. Different things work for different people, and it's on us to find what those different things are. And I recognize now that like my expectation or my desire, because I didn't even expect it because I did not expect much from her, but my sincere hope, my sincere hope and dream and wish that she would find resources to work for her, that was not crazy. That was like a bare minimum. Bare minimum. That was not unreasonable. That was not crazy. I also now believe that it was never my responsibility. Not just for her. I also now believe that it never was, it never is, and it never will be my responsibility to find resources for anyone's healing except for my own. Okay? And I say this as a fully content, childless woman. Like, I'm not responsible for nobody's healing. I now believe that it wasn't ever possible. It is not ever possible, and it will never be possible for me to support the healing of someone else who hasn't chosen to. There's nothing I can say or do for someone that is more powerful than their own choice to do it for themselves. It's just not possible. It's part of, and I recognize learning this has kind of like been a dismantling of codependency. And it's also been a recognition of my own power and free will, and a respect for the power and free will of other adults and other humans, right? Like I just can't, nothing I can do for anyone will be as powerful as any choice they ever make for themselves. And like, I have to respect another person. Like for me, holding that and understanding that is a way of respecting someone, their power and their agency in their own lives. And I can say, because of all the things that I thought I wanted to do, like, because of so many things, I can recognize how me trying to find resources for her to get help, me suggesting all these things, I can recognize how that was my way of being controlling, in the sense that, but I was trying to control the uncontrollable, and it was a losing fight, and I was not receptive or aware of, I didn't have the capacity to see or recognize that she had made that choice. And this is why I feel another thing I'm so grateful to understand is like, people will communicate their choices to you without ever saying a fucking word. And this is not something I understood before. It's not really something I accepted before, because I think it's pretty simple, but the challenging part is accepting this means accepting, it's more than just accepting the truth. It's like, well, if this is true, then that means what I want isn't here, or doesn't exist, or is gone, and da-da-da-da. And then you have to like cope with that reality and mourn it and adjust. And so there's just so much wrapped up in that one piece. But yeah, I just can't, my actions are not more powerful than anyone else's choice. And in my life, my choice is the most powerful thing in my life. And that I just fundamentally believe that now. I also believe and understand having some type of like intersectional identity, living in the margin, existing in the margins of society, does not excuse or justify shitty behavior and the choice to consistently be shitty. Like, it just doesn't. I don't care what your sob story is. It doesn't, that's not an excuse. And I thought that allowing that to be used as a justification was compassion. And that's not compassion. Society would have you think it is, because it's very clear who benefits from that idea, right? It's not me. It's not any other survivor, right? But people benefit from that notion. And I disavow myself from that idea. And I just believe that your identities, and your traumas don't justify shitty behavior, and certainly don't entitle you to treat other people shittily as well. In the future, let's see. I really hope that what did I mean? No amount of suffering allowed to create it. Okay. Well, don't remember what my first note means, but what I will say about my second note is, in the future, I really hope to be able to recognize an external locus of control, like how people talk about themselves in the world. If I hear an external locus of control, run, girl, run. Like, fuck that shit. I'm not here for it. And I've been through too much, have survived too much to like ever entertain or fuck with somebody who does not feel like they have control over their lives. Because it's a pathway to project, because what that means is life will inevitably life. And so when life lifes, if you have an external locus of control, that means the people nearest to you will be casualties, right? Because it's gonna be the fault and the blame has to go somewhere, right? And I'm not saying walk around with feeling like you're the cause of all bad things in the world. That's also not good, because I used to do that. And that's why when my ex-wife started treating me poorly, it didn't, as terrible as it wasn't out of alignment with my inner world and my beliefs about myself. So it wasn't that jarring of a difference. I'm not saying take the blame. What I am saying is, if everything is totally everyone else's fault, then like I can't fuck with you. You can't sit with us. You can't. I'm sorry, not sorry. And this other future hope or desire, I don't remember what this last note is, but if I do, I'll add it in the description notes. Yes, but thanks for listening. This was quite a ride and a journey talking about this topic of the martyr in an abusive relationship. I'm so curious how, what, if anything, you related to, and how did this theme continues to show up in any relationships you might have been or are in right now. If you can and if it's safe, share your thoughts in the comments. Otherwise, just send energetic love and I receive it. But thank you so much for joining me. I'm Sable, host of Full Out Healing, and I'll see you next time. Bye.